All right. I think we'll get started. People are just coming in. I think if anybody else comes, we will get them. Did everybody get one of the My Data Diaries and the stuff tonight? All right, good. We will be going through what the stuff we got handed out. We'll be going through that tonight, and Dara will answer all questions. Let me just say a word of prayer, and we'll get started. Father, thank you for this night. Thank you that we'd be here together. I'm looking forward to learning from what Dara has to teach us tonight. We're thankful for her for coming into this place and bringing her expertise and her great, amazing tool that she put together. And I just give you glory for tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. So tonight we're honored to have Dara Ray with us. Dara has built this tool that you have in front of you called My Data Diary. I love it. Every one of my clients, when we close a loan, we give it to them. It is something that is very impactful. It's a great tool. I won't throw up everything that she's going to say, so you will see tonight. But it covers more detail about your life than most people stop to think about, especially when we're talking about documentation and you start thinking about end of life, where things are. I was reminded last night at my grandma's house, we had set her up a Roku so she could watch Angel Studios and The Chosen and things like that. And, teaching my grandma to use that alone took the patience of Job. But we're there. She can finally use it. And then she wanted one in her master bedroom. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to put one in her master bedroom and she can watch it there. And as we were going through it, we were trying to log her into her Gaither channel that she had paid for. And I said, Mima, what's your password? She goes, well, I didn't set up a password on the other one. You know how that went. I said, well, you sure you did? She goes, well, I don't know what it is. So she has her little place where her passwords were. And again, Rhonda, my wife, looked at me multiple times with raised eyebrows like she is now and laughing. I'm like, forget it, You are watching Gaither in the living room, and you'll have to turn it up real loud. You aren't watching it here. So knowing where passwords are, knowing where things are is important. And tonight we're going to talk about how important that is, especially in critical times of life, not setting up the Roku channel. But I want to welcome Dara Ray.
Thank you very much, Shane. Thanks for the invitation. I am thrilled to be here with you today. And I'm going to tell a Shane story, because I can. So I love that he stands here and tells you that he loves my solution. I love that he is providing the solution to you so that it can be a tool for you and your family. And I love it most because he thought he didn't need it. Yeah. So Shane is a consummate professional, and when we met, he said, okay, I'm interested. I want to hear about your tool. Come show me what it looks like. And we met for lunch, and I walked him through it, and I was all excited. And he said, so, all right, I'll do this. I don't recommend anything that I haven't done myself, but I'm just doing this because I know I've got everything, and we're organized. And I said, well, you ready to make a wager on that? And he said, oh, no. Rhonda's really organized. We got this. I said, okay. I said, I'll just bet you. I'll bet you we'll find at least one thing that you don't have or should have. I think we found one thing in the first half hour, right? So it was one of those things where we really do completely take for granted the details of our lives. They happen all around us. It's like we don't even pay attention. It's like driving a car. You just learn these new things, and you get these new habits, and you have all of these new behaviors, and you don't even know you're doing it until you need to know how to do it for someone else, or until you need to know the password for the Roku for Mima. And by the way, sometimes that password for the Roku for Mima is very important to Mima. And when you're taking care of someone who's not doing well, that password to the Roku may be just as important that day to you as the password to the bank account. It really will, okay? So thank you for having me here today. My name is Dara Ray, and I want to talk to you a little bit about family information management and about family information management in a digital world. Because whether you like it or not, that's where we are. And we are getting further into a digital world every day. A little bit about myself, just so you know, professionally what I do and where I am, who I am. I'm a business professional. I had 30 years of business and industry experience in finance and accounting, everything you would expect of somebody who's going to come talk to you about data and information and documents and finances and all that stuff. That's my professional background. I've got the pedigree MBA, the whole 9 yards, blah, 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 blah. Okay? I'll tell you a little later why I really do this. I still have a big girl job that pays my bank account, pays my bills and fills my bank account. I do this because it fills my soul and because I want to help people not make the mistakes that my family and I did. I want to save you from some of the mistakes, and we'll talk about some of those, and we'll talk about some of the great wins we've had as a family too. So to get started, and I will talk at you a lot, but I'm going to actually ask you to talk to me, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and this will be way more fun if you do. So I'm going to ask you to go to the first slide here. If you got the emergency phone call, imagine somebody you love doesn't live in your house with you anymore potentially. Could be a child, could be a parent, could be a grandparent, could be a best friend, could be a neighbor. If you got that emergency phone call, would you have the information you need to help them? The family information, the household information, the legal information, the financial information, all of the things you might need. How many people think they would have what they need if they got the phone call? I bet you wouldn't, because you might not even have what you need for yourself, right? So what does that mean? Next slide, please. What kinds of information am I talking about? Okay, I just made your heart race a little. And actually, the one you have on your table has more classifications than this. But when we talk about the kinds of information and the kinds of details and the kinds of documents that you need, it's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of data points for a household between passwords and accounts and documents and information and vital documents. So what kind of documents am I talking about? Shout it out. I want to hear what kind of documents you think you might need. Medical records. Anybody. For yourself or somebody you need to step in to help. Power of attorney. Bills. Did I hear bills? Wills. What about not end of life? Like just stuff. Okay, yeah. I'm going to throw one at you. How many of you have had a friend say to you, hey, can I put you down? And you would make sure they were watered, fed, and had a bed. Because chances are you have no idea if they have medications. You have no idea who their doctor is. You have no idea if they have allergies. You have no idea if they like chicken nuggets or pizza. Right? Most of the time, those details, we say, of course, please put me down as an emergency contact. And would you figure it out? The child would not starve. You would make sure that they got taken care of. But it might not be the easiest transition for you or for that child. And in a time of crisis, we want this to be as easy as possible for everyone. So I use that example very intentionally because when I talk with a group like this, everybody is immediately thinking about end of life, which is very important, and we will talk about end of life. But this is not just about end of life. This is about life. This is about managing the details of life, and it's not always in an emergency. So I'll give you another example. My daughter, she graduates from high school Saturday. Thank you very much. I will be an empty nester. Last 3 years, I have registered her for high school. I have had to upload her birth certificate. I have had to upload her immunization records. I have had to upload into systems all of this information that if I didn't have those documents already digitized and organized, I would have had a problem. I just registered her for college. We just did all the same thing. It's completely digital, completely electronic. There's no office to walk into. They don't want copies of your papers. Everything has to be digital, okay? So this is about the joys of life, too. This is a joyful, wonderful thing, but let me tell you, it's a pain in the bottom if you don't have the information and the documents that you need. And it's about your pets, and it's about your car. I mean, I go to a vet office that to get past the phone tree, I have to put in my vet's patient number so that when they answer the phone, they know who I am. And they answer it. It's quite lovely. Hello, Ray family. Who are you calling about today? It's quite lovely. And they would have answered the phone if I zeroed myself out. But it actually makes it quite efficient because by the time they answer the phone, they know that it's the Ray family calling. They have the records right up there. They know it makes it efficient. But you miss out on all of that benefit if you can't participate. So this is about your information, your documents, and how to make this new world work for you to simplify the business of life every single day and to help manage end of life, which is a reality we all face. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to go to that, why do you really want to do this? I can tell you all the cool stuff and, you get some of these easy things. But really, what this comes down to is having the right information in the right place and at the right time will save you time. It will save you money. It will save you frustration. And if you're not, depending on the information, if it's allergies, if it's medication, if it's something else, it could even save a life. Having that right information. So you want to make sure that for the people you love and the people who you may be asked to care for, and importantly, for the people who may be asked to step in to care for you, that they have the information they need to make really informed and good decisions for you. And I say this because it's hard. And you're not going to always get it right. And when you don't have the information, I can tell you from experience, it's really easy to make the wrong decision. And sometimes it's life or death, and sometimes it's just money. And I say just money because it is just money. But I will tell you that when we faced one of these emergency situations that I'll talk a bit more about with my mother-in-law, I was faced with a choice in the hospital about option A or option B. At the time, I was managing a large nonprofit. I was CFO, and I managed the healthcare plan for the whole company. I really knew healthcare. I was really arrogant. I really thought I knew healthcare. I really knew commercial health plans. And my mother-in-law was on Medicare, and I knew nothing about Medicare. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know how the deductibles worked. I didn't know how the periods worked. I didn't know how the coverages worked. And I was given choice A and choice B. I chose B, and it cost our family $5,000. Had I chosen A, it would have been covered, simply because I didn't know. So this is when it's really these details. And so that's actually a message I do try to share, because most of the people I'm talking to in a group like this will be thinking oftentimes about stepping in to care for someone they love who is on Medicare. If you have someone in your life who is on a Medicare plan and you don't understand Medicare, please encourage them to get a Medicare checkup with a Medicare professional and go with them. Learn about Medicare. Make sure their plan is optimized for them, but importantly, begin to engage and make sure you understand how their plan works. And whether it's Medicare or Social Security or their retirement plan or their pension plan, having the basic information you need to know how it functions is really important if you're going to be asked to step in. Next slide. So we've talked a little bit about the digital thing and the cool stuff. They can answer the phone and know it's you and have your record and all that stuff. But it's a real dilemma because, I don't know, I'm in my 50s. I have 50 years of a lifetime of paper that I've accumulated in boxes and file cabinets and file folders and safes and safe deposit boxes and, I don't know, attics and garages and basements. And now not only am I supposed to find them, but I have to engage with them in a digital way. They've got to be digitized. They have to be organized, because the other thing that comes with digital is speed. right? Everybody expects you to be able to produce your information and your documents immediately. It's actually to your benefit if you can, because things go really fast. But if you can't, then it gets dropped and you go find your documents, and then you've got to get back in the queue and sit on the phone tree and do all of these things. This digital world is a real dilemma. So I want to help people build that bridge from those paper documents into a digital world so they can engage digitally. And when you're applying for a home loan, I heard somebody here talking about a home loan, or when you're applying for college graduation, or all of these things, when you sit down to fill out that document, send information to Shane or some other professional, you've got it right all at your fingertips. You get it done and you move on. And you too get to benefit from the speed of digital. But the only way to do that is to figure out how to digitize your own documents. And here's the real challenge. Industry, go ahead to the next slide, is spending trillions of dollars a year on digital transformation. They're building systems and tools and processes and automations and all of these things to speed decision making, to give them access to information. It benefits us. We get better information, we get better guidance, we get better if we can engage effectively. And nobody's spending it to automate for us. And that is what I realized was a problem that we as a family had. And I will talk a little bit about that. Well, I'll share it with you now. And then I'll show you pictures of them later. So I've talked about my failures as a family. I'm going to talk about the colossal failure. I mentioned that I was a CFO of a nonprofit organization. I mean, I had a big girl job. I did this for a living. I managed organization information. If an auditor walked into the office, I could lay my hands on paperwork. If a board member walked into the office, I knew exactly where everything was, right? Well, rewind. 1999. My 59-year-old father-in-law has a massive heart attack. He has octuple bypass surgery. It's all 8. You only have 8 arteries. He has this exploratory laser tunneling, and as a family, we are told, without the surgery, it's time to go home and plan for the end. With the surgery, we're 5-10 years on the outside. We chose surgery. He survived surgery, and we became what I call an activated family. When you're told you have X to Y years, or you have a terminal illness, or something, the end is in sight, you become an activated family. You do, I heard will, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, all the documents that you need for end of life. We did that. And he didn't want any stress. My mother-in-law was a retired legal secretary. She had this, okay, we are gonna get it all done. The will, the healthcare power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, all of the documents, the financials, she took over everything. She did most of it anyway, candidly, but she took over all of it. No stress on Dad. This was fine. Took a deep breath. We knew where the copies were. Everybody felt good about it. We were ready. And 5 years passed, and he was still alive, and we were grateful. And 10 years passed, and he was still alive, and we started calling him the Energizer Bunny and couldn't believe our good fortune as a family. 17 years after his massive heart attack and octuple bypass surgery, he and my mother-in-law walked on their own 2 feet into what was then Taco Bell Arena to watch my son graduate from high school, something we never in a million years believed would happen. Joyful. How blessed were we as a family? And 4 months after that, my mother-in-law caught the flu and died in 5 days. And we were completely blinded by our expectation bias. We had prepared for her to go. We had not prepared for him to go. We had not prepared for her to go. It had been 18 years since we had talked about the documents. It had been 18 years since we had looked for the documents. Did we find them? No. I knew that she had her healthcare power of attorney documents filed with her doctor, and her doctor said they were in the system electronically. We thought we were covered. They lived in Weiser, Idaho. They were loaded into the St. Luke's system in Weiser, Idaho. When she got sick, she was transported by ambulance to Boise. The Boise system doesn't talk to the Weiser system. It was a 3-day weekend. We didn't have her healthcare power of attorney, which meant family meetings, and we luckily knew what she wanted, and as a family, we didn't argue about what she wanted, so we were able to make decisions on her behalf and had the support of the medical team, candidly, because there was so little chance of recovery. I mean, I hate to say that. We were lucky that there was no chance of recovery because then they didn't fight us over her wishes. What a horrible position to be in. This was my colossal failure. I had this big girl job managing data and information, and as the CEO of my family, I failed. So, like any good business person, when the dust settled, I took a good look in the mirror and I said, and how did that happen? We got to do that, but look in the mirror, that retrospective and postmortem, and what are we going to do to fix that? And I realized that it happened because we didn't have a system. We didn't have a tool. We didn't have a process. The world had gone digital and moved past us. We had not figured out a way to do this. So I, by this time, was actually doing a bit of consulting with families because I did so much of this, right? I helped people with their family information, and I thought, I'll go get myself a tool, use it for myself, use it with my clients. This should work out well. And I went shopping, and I couldn't find one because nobody's building a tool for the individual consumer. Trillions of dollars are being spent on tools designed for industry. And so I flipped this on its head and said, we need to build a tool for ourselves, and that's what Shane has gifted you today. That is a tool that we developed out of personal need that I now use for my family and with all of my clients. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because it's time we level the playing field. You need to have your information and your documents in a digital format so that you can engage in a digital world. Make sense? Next slide. But with digital comes this huge risk and responsibility, right? Now all of this information's flying around the digital superhighway, and with digital comes all these issues about security and privacy. So let's talk a little bit about privacy first. So when you've got all this information, whether it's health information, financial information, we want it to be private. We want our passwords protected. We want assurances that if we have a terminal illness, that our employer isn't going to find out about it until we want our employer to find out about it. And our neighbors aren't going to find out about it until we want our neighbors to find out about it. That is your right to privacy. As an individual, I am grateful for HIPAA. I am glad that my personal health information is private. As a caregiver, I hate HIPAA. It's horrific. Here you are trying to get the information you need to take care of your loved one, to honor their wishes and preferences that you've done everything you needed to do to have documented, and because the form wasn't signed at that doctor's office, they're going to stand behind the wall and say, I'm sorry, I can't share that information with you. And by the way, it's not just for your loved one who's aging. Any of you have college students? If you have a child who is, I call them adults in training, 18 to 26-ish, because they might. So you might pay the tuition bill, but you can't know anything about how they're doing in school unless they filled out a FERPA form. This is good. The protections are good. You just need to know what you need to know to have the information that you need to help them. And to have the conversations with your loved ones, whether they're 18 or 80, to make sure that you can help them and set expectations accordingly. So yes, my daughter I have a power of attorney for finances, I have a HIPAA form, I have a FERPA form, and we have a family that trusts one another, and she trusts me to help her. So that's the other thing I'll say. You don't want to fill out these forms if you have concern about trust or exploitation within your family. I hate to admit that anybody needs to think that way, but be cautious about whom you provide permissions to. About 80% of exploitation of seniors comes from family members. Okay, so that's something you need to be careful of. But permissions, you've got to have the permissions, and you've got to have the security. I don't know, I keep track actually. I have received 3 so far in 2023 notifications that I have been part of a breach. Okay, so one of the things you will see about the tool that Shane has given you and the tool we have designed, our tool is not web-based by design, because I'm not going to put all the keys to my kingdom behind one password on somebody else's website ever. There's already enough of that out there. If I'm going to put all of my information about my bank accounts and my cars and my home and my retirement accounts and my health care and all that stuff, that is something I want to keep very private. So security and privacy, super important in a digital world. Only you can decide what you're comfortable with. And we've designed our tool in such a way that you choose. If you want it to be completely private, it lives on that USB drive, never has to be connected to the cloud. You control the password. If you're comfortable with the password and you want to put it on OneDrive, put it on OneDrive. Your choice, okay? So security and privacy, risk and regulation, they're not going to go away. Expect more passwords, expect more dual-factor authentication. You've got to document how to get through that and protect yourself, making sure that you both have access and permission, right? It's not enough to just have access. You've got to actually have the actual permissions. Next slide. And I've talked a little bit about this, and this is not my term. This is an industry term, caregiver burden. I actually view being a caregiver as a gift. I'm sure many of you do as well. It's not always a gift, it's sometimes a burden. But the industry term talks about caregiver burden as the number of potential caregivers, aged 45 to 64, I think, available to care for people over 80. Because that's usually who's caring for our older olds, our aging seniors, 80 plus, is 45 to 64. Because of the way our culture has changed, families have gotten smaller, and we have stayed healthier longer and are getting older. In 2010, there were 7 people aged 45 to 64 to take care of every person 80 plus in need. By 2030, it'll be 4 to 1, and by 2050, it'll be 3 to 1. So it's getting harder to do this. Information requirements are increasing. You need to be ready to move at the speed of light, and by the way, your workload just doubled. Okay? This is what digital means, and why I really hope, if you think about nothing else, is when you leave here today, you think about, how am I going to organize myself, however you choose, to effectively navigate this world? Because it's only going to get harder, okay? In some ways, and in other ways, it gets easier. Things happen really fast, right? Next slide. Maybe? Okay. And then there's this little thing called COVID. I put this in here because we're past COVID, thank goodness. We've figured out how to live with COVID, I guess is what I would say. And COVID, though, is an amazing example that we don't know what could happen. Because had you asked anybody in this room 5 years ago, would the world come to a screeching halt on March 17th of 2020, where we all stayed in our houses for almost 3 months and never went anywhere? We all would have said that is the craziest thing we had ever heard. So what happens in that kind of a situation? And do I think that will happen exactly that way again? I do not. But I don't know what will happen because I didn't think that could happen. So I use this as an example that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure when you don't know what's going to happen here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my clients and what happened in this situation. So in December of 2019, I had a couple, my clients, I was helping them begin their journey, helping them gather their documents and enter them into the tool. And we start with vital records. We start with birth certificates, social security cards, marriage certificates, divorce decrees, anything related to a life event. And I said, let's make sure you have copies of all of these documents, and they took that as homework. We had just barely started. They went on a vacation to see their daughter in California, and while they were there, he had a cardiac arrest and passed away. So 2 weeks of dealing with passing away from home and all of the things that you need to do, a funeral, a memorial, followed by a transition back to Boise and 3 weeks of a memorial service here, et cetera, et cetera. He died in December, and it was the middle of February before she realized the pension check had stopped coming. This was the pension check that paid her mortgage. Okay? So her children got involved. They made some phone calls. His company, it was a traditional pension from one of, an older company. And they said, oh, yes, there are widow's benefits. All you need to do is send us a copy of your marriage certificate. So by now, it's the end of February. They've learned that they need the marriage certificate. She's like, oh, thank goodness. Dara told me to get these documents together. And she went into her little box, and she found the marriage certificate. And this particular company had not yet gone digital. And she mailed the marriage certificate to them. And they called and said, this is not a legal marriage certificate. This is the one from the church. They had the marriage certificate that was issued by the church, not the one issued by the county. She got this information on March 15th, and the county that she got married in was 6 states away, and that county office closed for 90 days. Who would ever have thought it would not have been possible to get a copy of a marriage certificate from a county office? Not me. So in this situation, luckily, her children were able to step in, cover the costs. It was also candidly COVID, so nobody was, she got a bit of a break because nobody was kicking anybody out of their homes for bill non-payment, right? But in this situation, it took 6 months to figure out how to get that pension turned back on. And had she had the legal document, it would have processed, and she wouldn't have had that trauma. And I call it a trauma because the reality is they figured it out. You too will figure it out. But it's not without a lot of anxiety, stress, and trauma that comes at an already traumatic and stressful time. So anything you can do to make it easier on you is what I want you to think about. Okay, next slide. So this administrative burden of care, I'm going to give you another statistic, and then I'm going to stop throwing some statistics at you and giving you all bad news, and then we're going to talk solutions. Sound good? Okay. It's a truth. Family caregivers who are actively caregiving, okay? And this is unpaid family caregivers. You've all been one, or you all will be one, or you are one, or you will need one. Guaranteed. Okay? They spend an average of 13 hours a month managing administrative matters of care. This stuff we've been talking about, chasing paperwork, finding documents, filling out forms, paying bills. 13 hours a month, at least. Thank you. That's an average, so that means some people are way down here and some people are way up there. And when we start on this journey, inevitably, it's like, all right, it's short term. How long could it possibly last? Next slide. So how long do you think the average caregiving role does last? 5 to 10 years. People are starting to guess this to be more real. Most people enter into this thinking it's episodic, someone will get better. 6 months, maybe a year. Even in our situation where we were given 5 to 10 years, it was 23. Okay? So the average duration of a caregiving role, this is an AARP study in 2015. They don't refresh these all that often. I'm guessing the numbers have gone up because people are living even longer. 24% is more than 5 years, and 15% is more than 10 years. That's a long time to spend 13 hours a week times 52 weeks a year times how much time, and I can't make it go away. That 13 hours will not go away, but I want to give you as much of that time back as I possibly can. So you're spending less time administering care and more time loving your family member, okay? All right, next slide. So now let's talk solutions. Now that I've painted this nasty, awful picture of how horrible this is if you don't get it taken care of and all these terrible things that can happen, I'm gonna now tell you how to fix it, how to make this work for you. And we're gonna talk about what you need to do to update your family caregiving, family information management toolkit to survive and thrive in a digital world, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna have you do is your family information organizer. And I don't have to convince you to go buy one because you've just been given one. It's awesome, right? I encourage you to, Shane's gonna bring the quick start guides. They didn't come in tonight. He'll bring them for you next week. The quick start guide walks you through how to get started with the tool. This is a tool to help you organize your family information and documents. There are demos and tutorials on our website. You can find information there. And I'm gonna tell you the next thing too. And if you don't like my tool, it's okay. You don't have to use my tool. Honestly and candidly, I stand before you and say, I don't care how you do this. I care that you do this. And you need to find a tool that works for you. And when you select a tool, you need to use it in the way that works for you. So I'll give you an example. In our tool, there is a section to capture all of your passwords and all of your logons. That's awesome, right? Who here uses a password manager already? So Shane's gonna say, are you telling me you want me to take all of my passwords out of that thing and put them in that thing and then I'm managing them in 2 places? I'm like, nope, that's not what I'm telling you. Who has the password to your password manager? If you use a password manager, you put the password manager as the only password in your password section. Don't, make this tool work for you and use it how you want. We also have this nifty feature that if you don't need a section, you just change the status to do not need. It's a beautiful thing. Don't fill out a section you don't need. If you don't need it, don't use it. Don't be a slave to my tool or any tool. Find a tool to document your information and make it work for you. Okay? And our tool, as I mentioned, is not web-based quite intentionally. There are web-based products. If you would prefer a web-based product, you can find one. They will charge you a monthly subscription, but you will have access anywhere as long as you have internet access, which you won't have in a storm or an earthquake or a flood. And you just have to think about both sides. What is your risk tolerance? Where do you want to keep your information? How do you want to be organized? And our tool is mobile as well. It is on a USB drive on purpose because while it's not on the internet, if you have the USB drive with you, you can open it on any Windows or Mac computer. Okay? So you need to just find a solution that works for you. I have people that I know and love who have chosen competitive products on the web. It's good, all good. I just want you to do it. And if you really are totally stressed and this concept of digital totally freaks you out and there's just no way you can do this, I implore you at least get your information and documents all gathered in one place, find notebooks, put them all together. You still need to do this exercise, even if you're not ready to make it digital. And once you have them gathered, I encourage you to find someone to help you make them digital. Enlist a child, a neighbor, a friend, a professional. There are professionals who will help you with this, right? I still consult. There are other professionals in the Valley who consult. If you want help gathering or digitizing, I'm happy to give you a referral to people who will help you. I do believe, I ask you all to consider the importance and figure out a way to make it digital. And if you do want to ask someone in your family, this is actually a really great exercise to do with your family. Don't just do it for you, do it for them too. Do it together. And this becomes a process of sharing information that you're going to need, care power of attorney, and getting all of this while she's laying upstairs. He's telling me he's anxious, he's having heart palpitations, and I said, Dad, we got to go downstairs. Let's go have some breakfast, and I want to know what's on your mind. So he said, I haven't paid a bill in 30 years. I don't know where to start. I said, well, we can do that for you. You don't have to worry about that. So we put these pieces and parts in place, but I'm telling you, it's hard to give up control. And it's hard to admit you can't when you want to still be able to. And it's hard to give up your private information even to the people who you love and trust, even to the people who are going to get everything in the end. This is an emotional, psychological process that is very difficult. So I'm going to tell you a couple of little tricks. First of all, I don't think this is about aging. I've said that already, right? I think this is about living and living our best lives, and I encourage you to think about it that way as well and make it a family project. And if you're doing this with someone older and you receive this kind of pushback, like, I don't know that I'm ready to share that with you. Here's what I did. I had done this for my family. My father-in-law was really still hesitant about some key areas of information that we had a thimble full and we really needed the full glass of information. So I put together all of the key information for my children, who at the time were still minors. And I put together the information about our primary financial advisors and our accountant and our lawyer and the kids' medical information. And I sat down with my father-in-law and I said, Dad, I've finished this for our family. Is it okay with you if I give you, and I printed it out for him because he's not a digital guy, didn't even have a flip phone. So I printed it out and put it in a notebook, and I said, I really want to give you this information because if anything happens to John and I know you're going to want to be able to help the kids. And here's the information you need to help them. Here are our financial advisors. Here's who you call at the attorney's office. Here's the health information for the kids. Here's the basic information. What do you think? What do you think his response was? Oh my gosh, of course. Of course I want to help them. Let me put this in a very special place on the desk. I'm going to clear a spot. Cleared the drawer. I need to know exactly where this is in case they need me. We all want to help. And it opened an amazing conversation. What do you think, Dad? Can we gather the same information for you? For these details that we need? Because this isn't about me taking care of you because you can't take care of yourself. This is about us taking care of each other because that's what families do. It was a game changer. So think about this as a family project. This is what we do to help each other and take care of each other. And that being said, if you have concerns about privacy, and I have clients who have concerns about privacy, and they're like, I just am not ready to do that. If you have the ability to complete this tool and complete your information, you can dangle it in front of your children, and you can say, when my body is cold and hard, you can find this USB drive in my safe, and the password is blah. And then they have all the information they need. So I don't recommend that approach. I actually think there are real benefits to the other approach, but if you really don't want to share the information, you don't have to share it today, and you can truly make it when it's needed, okay? Whatever approach you take, make it work for you, make it work for your family, and all I ask is that you do it. I don't care how you do it, okay? And it is the foundation for everything you're going to do digitally. The information in the documents, you're going to be asked for them time and time again, and you're going to have to manage them digitally more and more in the future. The next one is the electronic health records. This is a favorite. Okay, so I've given you a flavor of this one. Mother-in-law has all of her information at the St. Luke's system in Weiser. She's over here in Boise. Nothing's talking to each other. We're still a long way from what they call interoperability in healthcare. That's the term. We will be interoperable for the vendors and the doctors and the providers, the payers and providers, long before we have access to that information in an interoperable fashion. And people will say to me, but Dara, I have access to my EHR. Yep. How many of those do you have? So for my little family of 5 at the time, I haven't counted since my father-in-law passed away, but when it was a family of 5, I had 15 EHR password logon combinations to manage my little family of 5. And we all lived in the same valley because St. Luke's and St. Al's have different systems, and Intermountain Hospital had a different system, and the VA has a different system, and the dentist had a different system, and the eye doctor had a different system, and. So they'll give you access to it, but you better remember where you had that test if you're going to use the system that way. So my recommendation actually, until we get to where if you happen to go to one doctor and you only use one health system and you only have one EHR, use it. Put the password to your EHR in your My Data Diary tool or in your password logbook, and you're good. But most people, that's not the case. And what I do and what I encourage my clients to do is when they get a test or they have a procedure or whatever, they go into the EHR for that test, that procedure, that visit. They download the information for that procedure, that test, that visit out of the EHR, and they put it in their tool. Because there's a section in the healthcare section around procedures and events and immunizations and medications and all of those things. You don't have to then remember, did I have that test at Luke's or Al's or Primary Health? Or you don't have to remember because it doesn't matter. You've already cataloged it where you need it. And again, I'm going to tell you another story. This isn't about end of life, okay? So I'm sitting in my big girl job in a meeting room, and I get a text on my phone. My husband had taken my then 12-year-old daughter to the doctor. She was having upper respiratory stuff. It was his turn. So he took her to the ENT, and I get a text. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I'm sure you all can relate. Do you remember how old Maggie was when she had her tonsils out? Well, her hair was about this long. So somewhere between 3 and 5, I'm guessing. The doctor had identified something that he thought might have been related to the conditions that she had that led to having her tonsils and adenoids removed, and he was wanting to inquire and ask for medical records so he could see if there was a history and a pattern, something that would have been very helpful to her. And so I went home and I dug through, I don't know how many boxes of files to find the doctor's name, and I called, and 2 or 3 weeks later, I had the doctor's information, and we got the information. But this could have been, had I had my tool at the time, I could have opened it up and said, oh, it was Dr. So-and-so, and do you want the surgery report? Because I can just download it and send it to you. That's what I mean. Just like we tell our junior high school children when they say, teacher XYZ didn't get the grade in the grade book, and that's why I have a B+ instead of an A-, and it's the teacher's fault, blah, 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 blah. And we said, how many teachers do you have? 6. And how many students do each of your teachers have? 250. Your doctors, no, your information will be no more important to anyone but you. Your information is most important to you. You can't expect other people to need it as urgently or manage it as carefully as you. So just like I used to tell my children in middle school, it's your responsibility to manage your grades. It's your responsibility to make sure your grades are in, they're recorded, whatever. Take responsibility for grabbing that information and having it and not relying on someone else to have it when you need it. And it does take some discipline, and it does take some time. But once you develop a pattern and a process and a repeatable behavior, it becomes habit. So that's the next story I'm going to tell. I talk about my kids and my family a lot because, we all have them, right? So I was just talking about Maggie being 12 and this, are you kidding me? I didn't know how old she was. So fast forward a few years, and she's taking her driver's ed classes. I've now got a tool. I trot around places teaching like this and talking and inspiring, hopefully, people to do things differently. And she's gone through her driver's ed. We go to her last session, and however the process worked at the time, her teacher had her permit to give to her. So the permit is sent to the driver's instructor, and at the final class, if she passes, the driver's instructor gives her the permit. So she has this permit in her hand, and like every 15-year-old, it was gold, right? Oh, this is freedom, I get to drive. And she's so excited, and she's carefully taking it out of the package, and she pulls out her wallet, and she's getting ready to put it in her wallet, and she goes, oh, you probably want to take a picture of this before I put it away, don't you, Mom? Yes, I do. Eureka! We've trained new habits, right? So this is just about getting in the habit. When you get a new document, when you get a new piece of information, snap a picture of it, put it in a pile to be copied or scanned. And you'll probably do some of both. If it's a single thing, I take a picture of it on my phone, and then I put it away and I store it later. If it's something I really have to pay attention to, I put it in the file for the end of the month bill paying. I pay the bills, and then I update my data diary once a month. Make it a habit. Figure out what works for you and make it part of your habit. Okay, so the next tool is your cell phone. We hold in our hands, I bet everybody here has one, more computing power than put man on the moon. Every day, truly. And my favorite tool on the entire phone is the camera, not for selfies. I take pictures of documents, and I send them to myself, and I put them in my data diary. This is super easy. And I failed. Even as good as I am at this, I failed. My daughter is 18 years old now. I deleted her ID from my phone because it was her responsibility, and we got somewhere that she was supposed to have her ID and she didn't. It was a lesson to be learned. But I create folders of pictures on my phone, and I have all our COVID records on my phone in a folder. I have all of our ID on my phone in a folder. My phone is password protected. Please password protect your phone. And I don't email those to myself. Yes?
Google Photos. Seems like every photo I take is up in the sky.
You can turn it off. So this really comes down to level of concern, right? And what your level of comfort is. I don't email myself any document that is sensitive, except in an emergency. I've done it in an emergency because it's all about risk, right? Risk versus need. So I have emailed myself copies of documents that had Social Security numbers on them when I desperately needed to get them to a vendor in an emergency because it was worth the risk and I was willing to take the risk and I would deal with it. And then I made sure it was deleted in as many places as I could find. So I urge you to be really thoughtful about how you use your electronics and how you use your digital information. But a lot of the information that people consider protected is things they talk about at dinner, like in a restaurant. right? So one of the things that I actually do encourage all of my clients, and I encourage you to think about, go home to your medicine cabinet and take a picture of every bottle of medicine that you take, because guess what's on there? The name of the medication, the dosage, the doctor who prescribed it, the date it was prescribed, the pharmacy where you get it, the phone number to call to renew it, the pharmacy ID number, everything is on the bottle. You don't even have to enter the information anywhere, it's on your phone. And I tell people who use my tool, by the way, there's a field where you can enter all of those things, or you can enter the name of the drug, take a picture of the bottle, and upload the picture of the bottle, and ignore the rest of the tool, because I told you, don't be a slave to the tool, right? Take a picture of the bottle, put all the information in there, and you have everything that you need. Use this phone, whether it's pictures. I'm going to tell you about a couple of my favorite apps. Apps are awesome. Lots of them are free. I use a tool called Genius Scan. Genius Scan does have a way to protect it. You can put passwords on it, so if you have to scan something that is protected, you can put a password on it. You can send it to yourself. I pay 99 cents a month for that privilege, but that way I can protect the documents. I have another couple of apps I love because I am a photo girl. PhotoMine. I love PhotoMine. How many of you have boxes and boxes of pictures? I've talked about documents, but oh my goodness, all of those amazing pictures of our history, of our family, right? PhotoMine is this amazing app, and I think it is part of family information because it's our history, it's our heritage. We want to know, right? So PhotoMine is this tool that if you have that scrapbook, drop them, then it allows you to put the names of everybody in them. And if you want to say what was on the back, you can notate them. And to make it even better when you've done all of that, you can send a link to your aunt in Timbuktu and share the memories with her and get the most delightful phone call when she has just enjoyed the photos that you have shared with her. Great tool. I love it. PhotoMine. Genius Scan. My other favorite one comes with everybody's phone. It's the to-do list, right? Shared to-do lists. When you're grocery shopping for a loved one and caregiving, and did you pick up mom's prescription? Did you get this from the grocery store? Did you create a list so whoever's at the store picks it up while they're there? New habits and using new tools. And a shared calendar. So those are my favorites, using the shared calendar. If you're sharing caregiving duties with family members, with children, with neighbors, create a shared calendar, give everybody access, and put everybody's jobs and responsibilities and appointments and everything on that shared calendar. This phone is a super important tool in your arsenal of your updated family information toolkit. Make sense? And the last one is digital services and tools. Who would have thought that I could order anything on the internet and have it, food, my favorite dinner, my favorite music, anything, right, is digital and can be digitally delivered. And I think some of this, I really encourage us to think outside of the box, because I've talked a lot about habits. We're all creatures of habit. I'm asking you to build new habits, but that means we have some really old, bad habits too, right? So I'm going to tell you a story about a phone call I received from my father-in-law. So this is the same father-in-law who had his heart attack in 1999, who was at my son's graduation in 2017, and his wife died at the end of 2017. And the day my mother-in-law died, my husband became a primary caregiver and was responsible for financials and for health care and for helping his dad manage the business of his life. We were there every weekend taking care. He lived independently. We were there every weekend helping him manage his home and manage things. My phone rings. I'm in a meeting. What else is new, right? I'm on my way to a meeting, my phone rings. I wasn't in a meeting. I'm on my way. I answer it because it's Dad. My heart is racing because when the phone rings in the middle of the day, something's wrong. And he said, "Hi, honey, had to call. I just put my toe through my sheet." "Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. I need a new set of sheets. And would you get me some new sheets before you come this weekend?" Sure, of course. So already my mind is going, okay, I've got this after work, and where can I go to get sheets? And I've got that event and that dinner, and we're supposed to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking, Bed Bath & Beyond, JCPenney. I'm like, what stores can I stop at? And he says, and I really love the flannel ones. Right, flannel, June, Boise. Maybe the discount rack at JCPenney's. And the red plaid flannel are my favorite. Oh, for the love of God. And then it occurred to me, on my way to my next meeting, I don't recommend it. It could have been a problem. I open Amazon. I search for red plaid flannel queen size sheets. I have a choice of 6. I pick the best value. Yes, I am an Amazon Prime member because I love Amazon. I pick the best value. I have it delivered directly to his house. They arrive the next day, and he thought I was a magician. Right? But I had to get out of my own way. I had to not fall into the old habit of JCPenney's, Bed Bath & Beyond, got to go after work, and I had to remember and build that new habit and embrace the new way of solving old problems. Okay? Next slide. So I told you professionally why I stand here. The reason I'm qualified to stand here is my family. Because like you, I was a daughter, a mother, a wife, a daughter-in-law, a goddaughter, a great niece. These are all of the people that at various phases of life, from infancy, from a special needs infant, to chronic, we all are walking this journey together. And I want you all to be able to spend as much time with them as possible and as little time managing their care as possible. So click once more. That's my father-in-law, John Lee Ray. Amazing man, lived an amazing life. 23 years after his surgery, where he was given 5 years to live. Next slide. My mother-in-law, who started this journey for me professionally. That was the catalyzing moment when I realized I was already helping people navigate the business of care when I had this failure in my own family and realized I didn't have the tools I need to be successful. And when I went shopping for them and couldn't find one that met my need, I created one. So I thank my in-laws for bringing me on this journey. And I want to leave you with some thoughts and some suggested 3 keys to success in a digital world. 3 words of advice. First is permission. Really, really important. As an individual, I love HIPAA. As a caregiver, I hate HIPAA. Don't assume a single financial power of attorney will meet all of your needs. Take that document that's been created by your attorney and go to every financial institution with the person who signed it while they have capacity and see if that financial institution has a document they want you to execute in their office. Will the original financial power of attorney eventually work once they get it past legal review and compliance review and everything else? It will. But if you've taken that extra step to fill out their form in their office, notarized by their person, you don't need to go that extra step. Yes? Yep. If you're joint owners on accounts, you do not. It depends on the account. I mean, the answer is like everything like in this. It depends. If it's his account and he still is alive and hasn't been incapacitated and hasn't passed away, you're going to have to wait. And then if he does pass away, you got to get through probate. And, so there's all of these things. or you put it in trust in both of your names and you don't. There's all kinds of mechanisms, and I know Amanda Andrasko's here next week. She's going to talk about wills and trusts. Which is right for you depends on your situation, but I really do encourage you to spend time, and it's a small amount of money for a consultation to find out what is needed in your situation. Every situation is different, and you really should get advice from a professional to make sure that your accounts are issued correctly for your situation, okay? Permission, and it's financial permission, it's medical permission, it's educational permission, everything needs permission. The next one is not gonna be a surprise to you, information. You need your information and your documents, and you want them. Don't be reliant on somebody else to have them for you when you need them. It will be an emergency for you, it will not be an emergency for them. And the last one, imagination. Because you do need to have a little bit of imagination. You have to imagine new solutions to old problems. You have to create new habits and be willing to shed some old, really comfortable ones. Permission, information, and imagination. And what I will tell you is I now, having navigated this terrain, and I've told you some of the stories with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, I'm going to try to do, I know he cries too, so I might do this. Have you cried yet for this group? All right. Not tonight? All right, so go ahead. I know you, Shane Irwin. I'm going to have you go one slide forward, and I'm going to show you again. So I navigated this terrain with many family members, and this last January, I had the honor and privilege of navigating and traveling the hospice journey with my father-in-law. When my mother-in-law lay dying, I ran around like a chicken with my head cut off. I was at the bank. I was getting new health care documents. I was managing financial information. I was driving to Weiser, searching for documents when I wanted to be sitting and holding her hand. And what I can tell you is when you do this, it works. Because I got to spend the month of January holding his hand. And that's what I wish for all of you. Thank you.
I love her. Yeah, we're going to do some questions. We're going to go through a couple things, and I'll call you back up. We'll finish. I'm going to go through a couple things real quick, and then call back up. The notes that I gave you tonight are there, and obviously there's something you can fill out on your own, but I think you can see why it's so important to know where your documents are located and where things are. Dara said it right. I sat down with her. She lives out in Hidden Springs, and we were sitting at the little place out front there, and I told her, we're good. We're pretty good. Rhonda's good. We were not good. We're not even close to good. We have a trust and a will. I know where lots of things are. I can remember the passwords almost all the time. Rhonda needs a little help from time to time. And constantly, I mean, she'll make a password. She'll walk away 5 minutes later and go, what was that again? I don't remember it. I'm like, you just let me make the passwords. So we do have a password manager, but we also have My Data Diary, and we have them there. The reason being is I honestly have the only password manager password, and it's dual authenticated, and I have even forgot it because I've made it so difficult. So I have to reset it from time to time because I don't want it hacked. But we do have our My Data Diary that has our stuff in it as well. What if something happened to Rhonda and I? Christian of Faith would need to know where that tool is and what the password is to just that tool, which they do know. And they could get into everything. We choose, like Dara, not to put it on the cloud. I have most of my stuff on the cloud. I believe Google's going to take over the world, so I'm going to join them. Okay? So Rich, I let my phone take my photos and back them up. I do. I get it. But to me, Google is dual authenticated for me and has a lot of password protections. And hey, look, I have a hard time getting into it sometimes. So the fact is, use some common sense. But if you're in the digital age, which we are, there's no choice here. I mean, I look back here at Brittany. She's barely older than my kids, but she's in the digital age. She could teach everybody in this room. That's all they've ever known, that generation. They don't know. I mean, today when she's up here giving examples and she's talking about report cards and uploading, I'm like, you're losing half this room. Half this room hand wrote them. They went home and changed the A. Right? That's right. That's right. No, all kidding and joking aside, you know, you need to know where your important things are. You need to know your passwords. I put on here, if you can't remember your passwords most of the time, you know, who's going to be able to access and help you access those things when you need to in a time of crisis. Passwords are a very important thing, but also permissions like we talked about on here. But I want to talk about something in Dara's tool that I thought, I'm straight with you. I'm a straight shooter all the time. But we got this tool. I told Rhonda, we're going to pay Dara to come to our house. We're going to go through this because I want to help other people. But this should be pretty simple for us. I was so wrong. The tool's in depth. She didn't even go through the tool. The tool, if you go to mydatadiary.com, you can watch tutorials and videos on how to do it yourself. If you need some help, I'll help you. I will bring some trifold things next week that will step you through it. But honestly, it's not rocket science. I can help you. I've helped lots of people. It's really easy. The tool is self-explanatory. When you start using it, she's made it user-friendly. It's easy to upload documents. It's easy to go through each category. But it's going to cover more than you can fathom. There is so much that you can put into this little tool. And it's not all documents. Some of it has much more to do with us as people. One of the things was end-of-life stuff, like there was some talk in there about, you know, maybe writing a letter to your kids, things like that. And maybe one of the questions was, who do you need to forgive? That one breaks me up because I was like, man, that's hard. Who do I need to forgive? There's some people I need to forgive. And there's something that we don't think what he's going to do. And what kind of letter would you want to write to your kids? What kind of thoughts would you want them to know? And there's some questions that goes through it and helps you do it. And I thought, that's kind of lame. I'm not going to do that. I'm a man. And then Dara told me a story about what her husband did and how he wrote this out for her kids and how he couldn't wait to read it to them. He didn't want to wait till he was gone. I think that's precious to me. And he did. They got together and he read his kids what he thinks of them. How powerful is that? That's in this tool. Derek, tell Scotland what you think of him. You think of your little guy who doesn't think of everything today that you want to know, but if you passed away today, what would you want him to know about what you think of him and what you want for him? That's powerful to me. And those are things that break me, yes, because I see that as like, wow, that's just like the Holy Spirit to me just speaking right through this tool that you can share these things that you would love to say. And Dara, she had her kids do this with her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law, before this tool was made, she didn't tell the story tonight, but I'm stealing it, Dara, because I love it. Her mother-in-law went through and wrote out letters for her kids when they were little, and really about what she thought about them and all these things to pour blessings into their life and what they meant. And, you know, they don't remember the mother-in-law like she was, because later in life she wasn't 100% herself. You know what I mean? She wasn't the same fun-loving person that she was when she was younger. And so the kids kind of have a warped memory of grandma. But then they got to read these letters when she was her. And how powerful is that? To have that to keep. So this tool has that in it too. All of these experiences in her life she's taken, and this tool is very inexpensive. I think you sell it for what, $65 now? That's free to all of you there. I bought them, a bunch of them for my clients. We give them out. But if you have any other friends or family that want them, this is a great value. It's a ministry at $65. There's no way you can't make somebody get their documents together. But you know what? We're going to get those documents together this side of their being alive or not. I'd like to do it on this side because it's going to be difficult. You know, we're working through this with my own family. Some of you, you're hesitant to go through this kind of documentation because it's not going to be easy to get it all together. Dara, I paid her, and there's a form down here that the yellow one you have is talked about. You can hire her to come into your home, and she has other help. They'll help you do it. They'll hold your hand all the way through it. To me, great value. That's what we did. She come to our house at our kitchen table and helped us do this work. Okay? I'll pay her 10 times that to get my mother and father-in-law's done. Yeah. Because it's important stuff. So I want you to understand that. But I asked on here, who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to ask forgiveness from? I want to go take you through a couple scriptures tonight. We're going to start in 1 Corinthians 4:14-33. You got those, Connor? Don't worry about it. I'll read it here. I got it. Connor, you've been perfect, buddy. That's probably my fault, not yours. I appreciate you, all you've done with this class, my friend. All right. Let me go to my Bible app. Can't live without it. On my phone. All right. It's 1 Corinthians 14:33. See, we serve a God of order. For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace, as in all of the congregation of the Lord's people. Then we also go down to verse 14:40, but everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. I believe that God's a God of order, and it's good to have your stuff in order. I want to also go into real quickly about what God says about forgiving. I think it's very important we understand this. Let me get to that. That's Matthew 6:14-15. So Matthew 6:14-15. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. I don't think that needs any explanation. It's pretty plain. We need to be forgiving others. It's not like an option. It's not a suggestion. It's hard, though, isn't it? There are some people that have hurt us deeply, that we have a hard time letting go. You know, my brother Marty, one time, he gave a quick story to me. He's a pastor. Marty was pastor down in Austin for 20 years. And one of the messages he gave was about forgiveness and about trust and how God operates and how we operate. And I never forgot it. I go to it often, this story. And Marty's talked about our dad. I think I'm a crier so much because I was raised by a single mama, honest. And when she's a crier, I'm a crier. Our whole family are. But I didn't have that dad influence in my life. I didn't have a man around. And it was hard. And I have hurts over it. I have deep-rooted hurts. And to be honest, I feel like I've forgiven my father, but sometimes things come up. And I'm like, man, I'd like to just punch him for that. Really, really hard, like 10 times. You know what I'm saying? But I do believe that I've forgiven him. But as I deal with this, Marty was telling a sermon, and he was real emotional about it too, because he's also a crier. And when Marty was giving this sermon, he talked about how forgiving and trust work, and he used an example of a bathtub. He said, I envision an old clawfoot bathtub full of water with a cork in it. You know, one of those on a little chain. We all see it in your head? That's what grandma had, right? I can see it. Nasty tub. Didn't even want to get in it. Cool looking. But you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's full of water. Marty says, I can see it, and that's what trust is like. We give people, most people that we love and know, a bathtub full of water, but when they break our trust, when they hurt us, the cork gets pulled and all the water drains. Not some of the water, it drains. When you've learned, when you've hurt somebody and you've lost that trust, they don't get a bathtub full of water. And they can be someone like my father sometimes will come in and say sorry. And he'd expect to have a bathtub full of water. But he was just trying to work to get the cork back in. All of us are that way. And it takes time to just get the cork in, let alone get any water. And over time, you get drops of water. And sometimes maybe the water will flow. Sometimes you can get water really coming in. You're like, things are getting good. But along the way, they make another mistake. The cork comes out. And be honest, sometimes it never gets back in. But let me tell you about my father. He doesn't operate like that. Everybody in this room, he'll give you a bathtub full of water by simply asking him. You don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Not one of you in this room deserve a bathtub full of water, and you know it. You can't look him in the face and say, I haven't done you wrong, over and over. Today. But he says, I'll give you running, living water. And I'll keep your bathtub full. If you just ask me, I'll give you chance and chance again. Because he forgives. And he forgives in a way that honestly, we just can't. He forgets. The Bible says that when we ask him to forgive us, he separates our sin as far from us as the east is from the west. That I've checked, that's pretty far. It's infinite. He doesn't remember it. Aren't you thankful that we get a bathtub full of water? And what he's saying with this scripture tonight is, if you want me to give you that, I need you to do that for others. Now that sounds daunting. Almost like getting all your documents together to put in this little tool. Today, when she was talking about doctors and getting all that stuff, I was thinking about the number for Kevorkian. I don't know why. I'm like, I don't want to do any of those things. This sounds awful. But we need to do it. I encourage you to do it. Take advantage of this tool. Come on up and let's ask any questions. So any questions you may have, let's open them up real quick, and we'll wrap up real quick after that with a word of prayer. Any questions for Dara or anything about tonight? Yes.
Yep. Uh-huh. So like every answer, it depends, right? So the question is, if you're using MyChart and all of your information is in MyChart, do you duplicate it into My Data Diary? And it really is, it depends on your situation. As I mentioned, if you really only go to one doctor, one health system, and everything really is in MyChart, you don't need to duplicate it. You need to put the EHR to MyChart. By the way, that is illegal, just so you know. Unless you're getting into MyChart, it's not actually legal, but we all do it anyway. Unless you've given somebody permission. Where I'm encouraging people to pull their information down is when they're navigating and trying to manage across multiple systems. In that situation where you have a family, some doctors at Luke's, some doctors at Al's, some independent doctors, different EHRs, and you can't remember where you had the MRI. I don't want to have to remember where I had the MRI. I have just made it my practice. I don't rely on MyChart. When I have an event in MyChart, I go take it out of MyChart and I put it in my tool. It's a preference, right? And it's how complex is your medical situation. It's another thing, right? If it's pretty simple and you don't have a lot that you have to manage, MyChart's probably easy enough. If you have multiple comorbidities, 6 specialists, you don't remember where you had that particular procedure or when or what the test was, the more complex it is, the more I encourage you to take control of your information. Is there another question? Uh-huh. MyDataDiary.com. Yep, the tool, and it's on the back of my business card, MyDataDiary.com. They can order it there. And then if they need help completing it, there's demos and tutorials on the website. I and some other people who do what I do have done tutorials and consulting over Zoom. You know, Zoom is, God, COVID was awesome, right? You don't have to be in the same place to do this stuff. So there are some wonderful things that came out of this. I can help you find a professional in your local area who can help you, or we can find somebody who can work with you if they want help, right? If they need help. So yes, you can order it that way. Any other questions? Yes. There isn't. Uh-huh. No. So the tool is designed, so since you all have this tool and I have permission, I don't usually talk about the tool this much, but you all have the tool, so I can. The tool is designed in such a way, it's designed for a household. So whoever you share money with, live in a house with, you put everybody's information in there. You create a profile for each person. You enter documents, you link them to individual people or multiple people. It's an interactive database to manage the entire household. It is designed in such a way that you can hide an entire profile. This is designed for that situation where you have this together for mom and dad, mom passes away, every time you open this tool you are sad, it's a horrible thing. But you don't want to delete the information. You just don't want to look at it all the time because you might actually still need it back. You can go in, you can hide that profile, and you can go along your way. And when you need to get to that information, because you might and will, you go back, you you open the profile, you can get to it, and you can hide it again. So we give you the opportunity to hide and unhide profiles. It's an 8 gigabyte USB drive. The tool has some advanced features and capabilities if you're actually going to do this with family members. On my USB drive, I have my family, my adult son, my father-in-law, my godmother, my sample family, because I have to have a sample to show people. Or somebody else I have. I have 7 databases, and I have hundreds of documents, and I have half the space still left. So, and what I just said, now, if you upload videos, you're out of luck, right? This isn't a place to upload videos and, you know, but the database with all kinds of documents, all kinds of pictures, you should have plenty of space. And if in your situation, let's say, here's the beauty of this tool. You do this with your family here in Boise, your in-laws live far away. The tool is 256-bit encrypted and password protected, so you can actually send the database over the internet because nobody can get into it unless they have the software and the password, which they don't. So your in-laws could send you their database files. You could put it in your data folder, and you can open it on yours. So only one of them is master, so that's the one thing. You'd have to know that theirs is a copy. But I literally do have 7 databases on my tool. When I open the tool, I select the database I want to open. I enter that password, and it opens that database. So this is a way for you to not only manage your household, but if you're helping to manage other households. A financial power of attorney ends at the end of life. A healthcare power of attorney actually doesn't, which is odd because now you're dead, but your healthcare power of attorney is alive. But your healthcare power of attorney, the person who's designated your agent, is the person who will make decisions about what to do with your body and things like that, and they can do that after death. But a financial power of attorney does end at death. So you asked, and I'm going to give you some things to think about. If you have a will and a trust, if you have a trust, things happen automatically, and whoever is named as the administrator would have access to assets as they went into trust. If you have a will, you'll have to wait through probate. So if you're worried about access to funds so that someone has enough money to pay bills and take care of things while probate is settled or things are settled, you can designate a pay-on-death beneficiary on an account, and then that person would get that money, and that's outside of probate and outside of a trust. In some situations, people will consider joint accounts. There's positives and negatives to that. These are the kinds of things we talk about when, as part of my consulting isn't just about documentation and information. Yes, I help you with this, but it's exactly these questions. And we probe, what's your situation? What are you concerned about? Why are you asking that question? But whatever your question is, there is a way to provide for that. And so you're doing exactly the right thing. By asking the question and thinking about what you need to do, you could have a joint account in certain situations that might work. I encourage you to be really thoughtful about joint accounts, especially if the person you're caring for, you don't want to be put as a joint owner on that account if it's going to commingle funds, and your assets might be considered their assets if they're going to be a Medicare, Medicaid eligibility thing. So there's all kinds of things you want to consider. This is an area that's really tricky. Talk to your accountant, talk to your attorney, talk to your financial advisor, ask them questions, or hire somebody to help you kind of think through it.
And next week we're going to have Amanda Drasco here. She's an attorney. She is going to be covering that stuff in detail, wills, trusts, that kind of stuff, advanced directives, things that will matter. Dara brought up a great point earlier, which was go to the facility like us. We bank Idaho Central Credit Union. We went in, and sure enough, the forms we had weren't exactly what they wanted. And we signed a few other forms to make sure. So you could go past that power of attorney and get stuff done without necessarily have to be joint on the account and get ability to because the bank now knows that paperwork was signed by that person.
But the easiest way is a pay-on-death beneficiary, because if you don't get access until they're gone and power of attorney's over, that account comes to you and it's just yours.
Or leaned on so much. Probate is something that happens when you inherit items that you have to go in front of a judge to say who's going to get what. Beneficiaries like life insurance, mutual funds, bank accounts, lots of things can say, if I die, they're left to this person. That happens before you get in front of the judge. So that's why you want to have beneficiaries. They pay out quickly. You don't need the judge to say who gets what. It's said ahead of time. So versus you die, the question we had before the class started tonight, somebody walked in and asked this question of us. If I die and there's a house, well, if the house doesn't have beneficiaries, unless it's in a trust, that person's going to have to go in front of a judge, which is pretty quick in this state, Idaho, to get that divvied out. State of California, probably take you a year in most cases to get that done. So you got to be careful in which state you're in and what, where you reside and where the house is or whatever. So different rules. We'll cover a lot of that next week. Next week's going to be very in-depth into the questions like that.
I think the other thing I would say on pay-on-death beneficiary, you really need to be thoughtful about this, because let's say it's your mother and she has $100,000 in that bank account and her estate is worth $200,000 and she intended for it to be split 50-50 between two children. That $200,000 in the home that's going to get sold will get split 50-50, but if you were the pay-on-death beneficiary for the $100,000, that's yours. So if you do pay-on-death beneficiary, you have to be thoughtful about how you intend the distribution to be. So it does get a little bit tricky, but Idaho, as Shane said, is a little bit easier. It's actually 6 months and 1 day is the fastest that probate will go in the state of Idaho. You could, yeah. In most cases, you can. But that's what I'm saying. You want to just be thoughtful about how you do that, because sometimes people are like, oh, it'll get all sorted out in the end, and those are the kinds of things that don't, right? That's a legal transaction, and it will actually, as soon as you're gone, that person is entitled to that money. It's not part of probate. It's just done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct. That is correct.
And if you need a third, it's spelled S-H-A-I.
Yeah, so it's all of these little details, and different assets have different rules, and and it makes it sound very complicated, right? I just made it sound very complicated, and I will tell you that my father-in-law's estate was very simple, and he had 2 children, and he wanted it 50-50, and he tried to tell me over and over that he needed a trust, and he needed to go see a lawyer because he needed a will, and he needed a trust because he had friends who had assets who needed wills and trusts, and they kept telling him he needed a will and a trust. And I said, you do not, right? Exactly what he wanted was exactly what the state of Idaho would do, and we saved him $2,500, and exactly what he wanted happened, right? So you don't always need a will or a trust. Sometimes you do, and it's very important. So it really is dependent on your situation. And actually, I'll take another question, but I would like to close with a bit more of the story that Shane told of my mother-in-law and the legacy letter. I want to talk about that legacy letter a little bit. Any other questions? So the part of the tool that Shane mentioned is called the legacy letter. The end of the legacy section of the tool, it really does ask all of the things that you should be thinking about. What kind of funeral do you want? Memorial service? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you have veterans benefits? All of these things that will make that end of life process better. But my favorite part of the legacy section is the legacy letter. And what Shane was talking about is a section in there where truly it asks you, what are you most proud of? What do you wish you had accomplished that you didn't? Who do you want to give forgiveness to? Who do you want to ask forgiveness from? I added the legacy letter, and it's included in my tool because I fell in love with the concept, because these conversations are hard. And this tool is about life, but it is very importantly about managing end of life. And there's a section in there for you to write your own obituary. And if you don't want to write your own obituary, it asks you questions. Because who's going to write your obituary? Your kids? How old were they? How old were you when they met you? How old were they when they have a first memory of you? You know, there's a lot of your life that occurred before they would have a memory. And it's an important part of the whole you, right? So whether you're just filling out that section or writing your obituary and uploading it, which is also an option, these are ways for you to really leave that mark of who you were. And I had been introduced to this legacy letter, like Shane had said. And I loved the concept because life is messy. And I had my own skeletons in my own closet and forgiveness that I needed to work on and ask for and give. And I had shared this idea with my mother-in-law. I had found it in paper, and I had given it to her. And as Shane said, her last 5 days were horrific. And she had had a pretty tough year before that. And my daughter was very young when she died. She was not quite 10 years old. Or I guess she was 11 years old when she died. And my daughter's memories of her grandmother were pretty tainted, as Shane said. And the memories of the last 5 days, we cannot control our exit. And the last 5 days were really awful. And my daughter had a front row seat. We were in crisis. She was at the hospital with us. And I didn't know how important this was until I found those letters. When going through my mother-in-law's desk, I had given her this paper, and she had made copies of it and had handwritten to each of the grandchildren what she thought of them and what she loved about them, and these prompts from this legacy letter. And I found them. And when I gave it to my daughter, her last memory of her grandmother was forever changed. What was sad and traumatic and belligerent and difficult and angry and fearful became beautiful. And so this process, yes, it's about data. Yes, it's about information. Yes, it's about efficiency. But really, it's about family and having conversations and the beauty of those conversations. And as Shane said, my husband, who was in my picture of caregivers, my husband, when I was 35 years old and had a 1-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. We faced that moment when the doctor said, if the medication works, you'll live a long and healthy life, and if it doesn't, we give you 3 months to live. And he's still alive, and he's with us, and we are grateful for modern medicine, but we had that moment where we had to look that moment in the face. So when he saw this legacy letter, as Shane said, he wrote it. And as Shane said, it was so transformative for him, he couldn't wait for his kids to hear it. And we had a dinner, and he read this amazing letter to his kids. And they wrote letters back. And this really became all about family and communication and love and conversation. And that's what caregiving is. And that's what family is. And that's really what I do hope that this tool and this process that you enter into for your family brings to you too.
Thank you so much, Dara. Say a word of prayer and we'll go. And one last comment on that. This all sounds great, but I found out during this process that my sweet, beautiful, soft-skinned wife wants to be burned and cremated. I disagree with it with all of my soul, but it's in our data diary now, thanks to Dara. And it's in our trust and our will now. And I'll tell you what, I'm totally against thinking of her body burning. And we're going to pray about that now. Lord, we know, all kidding and joking aside, we're thankful for tonight, Lord. And we will be with you one day. My obituary is going to say, he's with Jesus, heading to the back nine. And I thank you, Lord, that we'll one day see you face to face. Thank you for tonight. Let us go. Bless this week. In Jesus' name, amen.